That was kind of a cool promo. Kevin, welcome. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Football in Focus. I'm Ryan Downey, joined as always by Kevin O'Connell. We're presented by KO Football and 360 Sports. How you doing, bud?
Doing well, Ryan. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. A little birdie told me, and by a little birdie, I mean you, told me that you got another sponsor thrown your way on your other show, Buffalo Wild Wings. So I'm sure they're thrilled to have you. But it begs the question, are you just not bringing your A game to this show every week and sort of saving that magic and charisma for your other show?
Well, Ryan, it's hard to bring the magic and the charisma when you're constantly lugging another human being around as dead weight on your back like I have to do every week with you. So one of these days I'm going to figure out how to balance that and also bringing that magic and charisma that you speak of.
No, that's a very fair point. I apologize. I'll lose some weight if that's what you're getting at.
All 140 pounds of you.
All 162 dripping wet. So thank you for that. Before sort of we get into this week, and it was a pretty exciting week, both college and pro, I kind of wanted to take a step back. Kickers, for now and again, sort of become certainly a relevant part of what we see on Saturdays and Sundays, and I think the last couple of weeks that's been more true than at any point during the rest of the season. And I kind of want to make sure that everybody out there, I mean, we may only have a few thousand listeners, but I want to make sure that people keep things in perspective. UCLA missed a field goal at the end of the game against Utah last week that would have won it. I was at the UNLV Fresno State game. UNLV on homecoming misses an extra point inside of 2 minutes. Fresno State comes down, misses a field goal, so it goes into overtime. USC has to survive a Sark timeout and a missed field goal from Arizona at the end of that game. Cincinnati Bengals end up tying the Carolina Panthers yesterday because they miss a field goal late that's a chip shot in the NFL. And then Adam Jones, their cornerback, basically says the kid should be cut. Then fans go to Twitter and death threats run amok. I mean, this is a football game, and anybody sort of spewing death threats after a young man or a young professional misses a kick that they're dealing with, let's go ahead and get a life at that point. I know we had some controversy last year, state of Alabama. There were a couple of kicks that were missed, and people were threatening others' lives on social media. It's absurd, first of all. Anybody that's saying or doing those things probably never played a sport past the second grade and probably wouldn't be able to sink a 5-foot putt at the 18th hole in their weekly Saturday game themselves. So I just kind of want to make sure that we're putting these things in perspective.
Well, I mean, maybe I need to go back to work on these production meetings if we're going to start out football in focus with talking about kickers. But I think I may disagree with you on that front. But putting football in focus in general, I know that's the name of our show here, but it is a game. And I had to go through not only playing college football, but moving on to the NFL. It is very easy sometimes, even as a player in the walls of those football buildings and in those stadiums, to take it way too seriously and apply some life and death logic to it when it has no place for it in the game. But the pressure to win starts at the very top, and these organizations, the head coach on down, are under a lot of pressure. And Adam Jones coming out and saying that's completely unacceptable, talking about a guy that he shares a locker room with. And at the college level, you mentioned Coach Sarkisian calling that timeout, and a lot of people are, giving him a hard time for, the fact that we're icing college kickers, and these are kids playing a game. But the argument, as we saw with Todd Gurley and these people and Johnny Manziel wanting to come out and say that they're allowed to earn money on their likeness, be careful what you wish for, because if that ever becomes a reality, the door will swing wide open for criticism of these guys, because if you're earning money on your likeness, then you got to take the criticism of your likeness. And that's something that I think sometimes, especially down there in the SEC, where it does seem like every play is life and death at times, that's something we got to watch out for. But football games in general, I did watch that Bengal game, and the way that thing came down to a tie, that's just tough because the team situationally, defensively, Adam Jones with a huge return late in the fourth quarter, everybody contributing to try to get a win, and you lose it on the foot of a kicker who maybe is on the field for 12 to 14 snaps a game, including kickoffs and PATs, and and field goals. That's tough, and I think those guys will be the first ones to tell you that that's their job and they need to do it, and they need to do it efficiently. As we've seen in Detroit, they'll go find somebody that will.
Yeah, do you remember back in your San Diego State days or one of your 5 years in the NFL, sort of things coming down to a kick that was either made or missed, and how did that play in the locker room? I can't imagine things are playing very well in Cincinnati right now when a teammate comes out against another one.
Yeah, I mean, it requires the leadership and the coaching staff and the captains of that team to step up, and you have to address that. Marvin Lewis, probably at some point today, if they I don't imagine after a tie they would have got a victory Monday, so they're all probably in there working. So Marvin Lewis is going to have to address that, and that's just one more thing that the kicker, I forget what his name is there in Cincinnati. I should know it because the only time we really remember these guys' names are when they either make big kicks or miss big kicks. We don't really remember the guys that make 5 for 5 extra points. But I think it's just a distraction. And when you're on a team that is in the middle of it and potentially has a chance to make a run this year in the AFC, you want to try to avoid that. Tying a football game is not the end of the world, especially one that defensively they didn't play all that great, to be honest with you. And I think that that Carolina Panther team's getting better every week, and you just go back to work this week and get ready to play again. But demanding or suggesting that a teammate should be cut, that's a very bold thing to do when any time the microscope could easily turn to you at any point in time.
No, and he, for one, has certainly had the microscope on him for some of the off-the-field antics he's gotten himself involved in. So of anybody not wanting to point the finger, it sort of seems ironic that it's coming from him. Stepping away from that for a second, we had another crazy week in college football. The state of Mississippi is high on life at this point. We talked about the brutality of the SEC West. Mississippi State jumps from unranked to start the season. 3 top 10 wins the last 3 weeks. All of a sudden, they're the #1 team in the country. I think it's the fastest and most aggressive rise in the history of the AP poll. Ole Miss, same kind of success lately. Beat Alabama beat A&M, handily in College Station. The center of college football seems to have shifted from the state of Alabama to the state of Mississippi.
Yeah, and rightly so. I mean, they have gone out there and put in the work. When you start talking about Mississippi State, I know Ole Miss has had a phenomenal run as well, but you start talking about Mississippi State and what they've been able to do their last 3 football games, beating LSU, beating Texas A&M, and then winning this past weekend. I just think Dak Prescott right now and that football team deserve every bit of credit. Dan Mullen probably doesn't get enough credit for doing what he's been able to do. Same with Hugh Freeze there at Ole Miss, because what you talk about what they're competing against on a week in and week out basis, not only on the field but off as well. Recruiting down there, trying to recruit against Les Miles and Nick Saban and some of these coaches that really have had a stranglehold on the success in that conference for a very long time now. And I look at the SEC, especially that Eastern Division, and you just start to wonder, at what point is this thing going to just completely blow up? Can Mississippi State and Mississippi hold on to the Egg Bowl at least and figure out a way to navigate a loss? Because you could be looking at a situation where there's not a single undefeated team left in the SEC by the time we get to that championship game, and with a team like Michigan State putting the gas pedal down and Connor Cook at quarterback trying to figure out a way to finish with just that one loss. You look at what Baylor's been able to do with Bryce Petty. You talked about that game. I just think, and as strong as Oregon looked, getting a little bit more healthy on that offensive line and providing Marcus Mariota with time, I just think college football is in a very, very unique moment right now with the college football playoff. I know we've addressed it week in and week out here on this show, but my oh my, do we have some stuff to think about, and more importantly, does that college football playoff committee have some things to think about, because there's not going to be a computer to hide behind when you decide to take a 2-loss SEC team over this team, or you decide to let Michigan State in, and everybody from down south wants to argue who and when and why they played who they did. And let's not forget about maybe the shocker to me was looking up that Notre Dame and Florida State, this will only be the 8th time that they've played coming up this weekend, and those are 2 undefeated teams with maybe a chance at that playoff on the line in that football game. College football week in and week out, I just don't know how they're doing it, but it seems like it's must-see TV each and every week no matter who's playing.
Yeah, no, interesting. I was driving home from the Oregon UCLA game and had ESPN radio on in advance of the start of the USC Arizona game, and Pat Hayden gave an interview, and he was talking about to the depth at which he personally and the rest of the 13-member selection committee is taking their responsibility. He sort of surmised that he spends about 20 hours a week going through film, reading articles, watching games to kind of come up with his weekly assessment of who the top 25 teams are in advance of that committee releasing their top 25 team later in October. Now, one thing that jumped to mind was, does the USC athletic department really want their athletic director spending 20 hours a week on something having nothing to do with USC? Because he has to sort of rescind his opinion when they're talking about sort of USC and seeding and things like that. But I think that committee, if he's a representative of the rest of the group, is taking this thing pretty seriously. So I think for the first time we have 13 individuals as opposed to computers that are really going to pour their kind of hearts and souls into this thing. So whether there's controversy or not, we know there's going to be. At least we have individuals that are involved and that have a say in things that are really going to kind of put their heart and soul into what's going on. You mentioned the Baylor TCU game and Bryce Petty's performance. That kid's got to have ice water in his veins. You've coached him over the last couple of years. We wondered whether TCU was for real after a big win against Oklahoma. They certainly proved that they were for real. I mean, they went into Baylor and almost came out with that win, but for a great fourth quarter comeback by Bryce Petty. What did you see specifically out of him in that fourth quarter that continues to tell you that you're a believer in him and he can have success at the next level?
Just that, the ice water in his veins, I mean, it's one thing to have that, but there's a lot of pressure on that kid, and there's a lot of pressure on that Baylor team, the new stadium, the opportunity to get to where they want to get to, and to be down 21 to a defense that is not easy to play against. I mean, they put up over 700 yards of offense, and the points that they did, and the over 500 yards passing by Bryce, and the 6 touchdowns. Throw all those things away for a second and just talk about the pressure on him. I know it's not the most intricate offense, and it's a lot of people take shots at Bryce saying that he's not running a next level type system, and how will that project. Take the X's and O's and all those things out of it. You still got to find a way to pick yourself up off the mat down 21 and will your team to win and make the plays that he was able to make late there. And there's no 40 time that you can clock for that. There's no Wonderlic test for that. There's no interviews at the combine that will show that type of film. I know there's some throws he'd like to have back, and some when TCU was able to get pressure around him, maybe missing some throws that he shouldn't have missed. But in the grand scheme of things, it's a production-oriented business at the next level. And you could look really pretty throwing the ball on a pro day in your shorts and T-shirt in March, or you can look really great doing the bench press or running the 40 at the combine. But when it comes down to being a franchise quarterback at the next level, it takes the ability to walk into a huddle, have your guys look you in the eye, and believe in you that you can overcome any adversity that might lie ahead. And I think that game is going to be one that NFL scouts and GMs and scouting directors circle for Bryce as one where he's demonstrated once again the type of character he has, the leader he is, and the physical skill set to get the job done as well. So that was really fun to watch. I think right now the quarterback position in college football, we're taking a lot of shots at guys when they aren't perfect, but when they do find a way to win games, sometimes not even pretty, they win them ugly sometimes. I think we need to take a step back and acknowledge the efforts and the leadership of guys as well sometimes. So I'm glad you brought that up.
No, it was impressive, and I think that's sort of an asterisk going to go by that game, because he was a rock star in the fourth quarter after a couple of rough throws earlier in the game. So I was sort of proud of him, and I was proud of the work that you've put in with him sort of going back a couple of years. You mentioned Notre Dame and Florida State. They both won games this weekend that everybody expected them to win, even though that's not been sort of a foregone conclusion in college football this year. They play each other this weekend. You've had it on your calendar for the last month and a half, and you've been telling me every single time we've talked that it's going to come down to that. Neither of those teams have an incredible schedule just because of the respective conferences that they play in. The winner of this game, you think, seems like they're destined for one of those 4 playoff spots. The loser of this game without a tough schedule after this, and I don't think Notre Dame's game against USC counts as a tough game as it could in many years. I don't think USC is that program anymore. Is the loser of this game this weekend out of the playoff race?
I think so. I think when you start looking at what is out there for teams in the SEC championship game itself, I think the winner probably is on the fast track to getting maybe the third or fourth spot in the 4-team playoff, in my opinion. Maybe the second if they're the number 1 or number 2 ranked team in the country at the time. But the loser, I still think, will find their way into a BCS, if you want to call it, or a post-January 1 bowl game, just because of the programs that you're talking about and the ability to travel. Anytime Notre Dame's anywhere near having the right to fight for a bowl spot in one of those big 6 games, they're going to find their way in just because they're Notre Dame. But you're right. And really, you got to look at Notre Dame and that schedule like they're almost another member of the ACC, because they obviously have all their other programs moving in there and what that will mean moving forward. They play a team like North Carolina last week, a 2-4 football team now that really had them on the ropes. So you start thinking what Jameis Winston and that offense can do. He, amidst the controversy that he finds himself a part of, continues to find a way to win football games and play well. Sounds like he's going to play this week despite the investigation and things that are going on there. I just think that Everett Golston just needs to figure out one thing, and that's the timely turnovers that he's had to really set his team back and force him to be really special at the end of games. Being like that in the first and second quarter will help him just have to overcome all this adversity at the end. I think he just needs to figure out how not to turn that football over, and Notre Dame's got a chance now because the defense at times has played really, really strong this year. They're running a new style. They've got some playmakers up front. A little suspect on the back end of that defense, but Florida State's got their question marks too. I just like the fact that it's a game where we're not talking about the SEC or the Pac-12. We're talking about 2 teams in the top 5 in the country right now, both undefeated, with the program and the history that both those teams have. I just look forward to it, Ryan, and I think it's really going to determine a lot of what we really hold on to the last half of this season.
No, I think that's right on. It's the game of the week this week. It's 2 versus 5, and I think it sets up for some intrigue outside of, like you talked about, the SEC or the Pac-12. One of the other games I was at, the Oregon-UCLA game, a lot of credit needs to go to Jake Fisher, the left tackle that came back for Oregon. ESPN wrote up a nice piece about him on Saturday night. You don't often see those guys in the trenches get recognized to the extent that they do. With him back there, holding down that blind side, no sacks of Marcus Mariota, they were a different offensive team. We talked last week leading into that game, the loser of that game, there was some concern they may sort of spiral out of control. It was pretty obvious late in that game UCLA was getting it handed to them. The head coach, Jim Mora, and the defensive coordinator are fighting on the sideline. Brett Hundley, I didn't know if you saw this, Brett Hundley and Paul Perkins, the running back and the quarterback, midway through the fourth quarter, they're getting pounded by 4 scores, and they're dancing to a song that's going on in the stadium. I don't know how much public sort of news of that was. It just was not a team built around strong leaders, seemingly. I mean, it's a program right now that had a tremendous amount of expectations going into the year, and I don't know where they go from here. But it seems pretty clear that Oregon has got that ship righted, and if they can run the table, they may be back in that conversation. NFL week. Great NFL week. I don't know if we can start the conversation without mentioning how impressive Dallas was in Seattle. They were historically one of the worst defenses in the history of the NFL last year. I mean, they couldn't stop anybody after they lost Sean Lee. Sean Lee's still not back, but they're figuring out a way to get it done. Denver went in there. They couldn't win. Dallas goes in there, and Tony Romo is Tony Romo in those good days he has, and they win that game. How on earth did that happen? Nobody saw that coming.
Well, I think you got to give that defense in Dallas a lot of credit, Rod Marinelli, and what he's been able to do with really think about the guys they've lost, whether it's DeMarcus Ware in free agency, the linebacker, I believe is it Zach Lee?
Sean Lee.
Sean Lee. I thought it was Zach, but Sean Lee. And then just the fact that they haven't got the best play outside at the corner position like they maybe thought when they signed the big free agent, and drafted Claiborne in the first round. But those guys are starting to play really well together, and Seattle just did not seem to have that counterpunch that they've always seemed to have at home, especially offensively. It might have been Russell Wilson's worst game he's ever played there at CenturyLink or at Quest Field, I believe it is. I just think the Cowboys and their ability to run the football and going, you got to give Jason Garrett and Bill Callahan and Scott Linehan credit, because what they're putting together offensively as the plan is really letting Tony Romo pull the best parts of his game out at the right times. We saw that big 3rd and 20 conversion. The throw on the sidelines to Terrence Williams was incredible. But DeMarco Murray, 6 straight games of 100 yards, the physical mindset that they take into a football game, and maybe against the most physical team the past couple years in the NFL on their home turf, to stand in the middle of the ring and throw some punches and give them a couple black eyes, figure out a way to win that football game. I think Dallas, look out, because this is what they've needed, a win like this to kind of confirm maybe in that locker room where they're at, not only as the team, but their leadership, both at their head coach position and the quarterback position. I think Dallas is sitting pretty. I do think at some point somebody's going to get them into a scoring fest, and the true Tony Romo at some point is going to be tested. 3rd and 12s in a 35-35 game. It could be Chip Kelly's offense that forces him to do that, but at some point somebody's going to test that team, and we're going to have to see that offense, Dez Bryant, Terrence Williams, Jason Witten, getting the ball thrown to them by Tony Romo against hopefully a good defense, and really be battle tested at that point. I thought that would come this week, and they were able to overcome it. Still, it's going to take a lot to have me completely sold that this Cowboy team has the chance to make it to February.
No, I think it's an astute point, because that exact scenario played out last year when Denver went into Cowboy Stadium for that shootout, and it was something like 50-50. I don't know what the exact score was late in the fourth quarter, and Tony Romo throws a pick that he wants back as soon as the game is over, and it was that exact scenario that's playing out. So I think they've played great. Their special teams are really letting them down right now. I don't know how they win that game with a block punt for a touchdown and then a fumbled muffed punt. I just don't know how they do that, but they somehow managed to do it. You spent a lot of time, or a little bit of time, with the Cleveland Browns in the offseason, or doing a little bit of coaching consulting for them on the side. Brian Hoyer has played great. There were shades of it the last 3 of the games last year when he came in before he got hurt. Pittsburgh Steelers are really struggling at this point. They lost another one. Alex Mack goes down their center, one of the unsung heroes on that team. How does that affect them going forward?
Well, I think I would have thought it really affected them, but they went ahead and moved one of their guards in there, who I know has gotten a lot of work throughout training camp, as well as some time with Brian and both Johnny Manziel as the backup quarterback. I really think that offensive line might be the most unsung story in all of professional football right now. When you look at, it's not just Joe Thomas on the left side and now Alex Mack being out. They're getting some quality play, and they're dominating the line of scrimmage. I think as a team, they're rushing for over 4 or 5 yards a carry. I'm not sure the stat. But when you look at what they're able to do and staying ahead of the down and distance, Kyle Shanahan, the one thing that I've learned about him is he's going to stick to the run, whether they're up 20 or down 20. He's going to run the football. He's going to establish that line of scrimmage, and he's going to allow his play-action game, which could be the best play-action game in the entire NFL, run action I like to call it, because they are selling the run, fitting up gaps, a lot of X's and O's talk, but what they do is they make it look like run more than anybody else in the league, and when they run it as well as they do, playing against 8-man boxes and Brian Hoyer being able to drop back and forget who's playing wide receiver, because they're beating zone coverage and teams that are so focused on trying to stop that run game that it makes Brian Hoyer that much more effective. And you have to tip your cap to him, because he's in a circumstance there playing in his hometown with maybe one of the most, popular football players in any level right now behind him, and he's able to go out there and compartmentalize each week and just do his job to the best of his ability, and he's winning football games, and he deserves a ton of credit. And it's been fun to watch, and I think this will help Johnny Manziel in the long run, getting to watch a guy play the position like Brian Hoyer is forced to with his skill set, where it's decision-making, it's timing, it's anticipation, and it's leadership, and that'll only help a guy with Johnny Manziel's skill set when he gets the opportunity and gets his number called at some point.
No, I think that's a great call. Your San Diego Chargers are 5-1. They continue to have all the answers on offense. I've seen some power rankings from some people that are fairly well known for accuracy in the NFL as them as the #1 team in the NFL. You've been singing their praises for the last couple of weeks. They got tested against Oakland. It seems like every couple of years, or maybe even every year, they have a problem with that Oakland team, regardless of how well or poorly Oakland is playing. Oakland seems to play them tough. They certainly play them tough up there at home, but San Diego answered the bell. Defense didn't play as well as they could have, but Phillip Rivers and that offense made the plays they needed to coming down the stretch.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned some of the power rankings from the people in the NFL who are known for their accuracy, because you're talking to me who around the NFL, I'm definitely not known for accuracy. That's 100% factual. But I will tell you that the San Diego Chargers are playing as well as anybody in the National Football League. Their quarterback, in my opinion, is playing the position better than anybody in the National Football League. And yes, that does include Peyton Manning. I just think that what he's able to do on a week-in and week-out basis, no matter who's up front, no matter who's in the backfield next to him, no matter what year Antonio Gates is in, no matter what type of, I don't want to say he's hurt, but Keenan Allen's obviously got some issues going on, prohibiting him from playing at 100%, but he's battling through it. Phillip Rivers, what he does, snap in and snap out at the line of scrimmage, is basically the coach on the field. It's such a cliche. He's beyond that. He's a coach / quarterback / general manager on the field, figuring out how he wants to use the pieces around him in real time against whatever defense you line up in. It really is impressive, and anybody that asks me about him will hear the same answer. He is the MVP of the National Football League through 6 games. That's not saying much. That's not saying he's going to win it at the end of the year. I still think that his legacy will be defined for what he does with this franchise moving forward into January and hopefully at some point February, because there's not anybody working harder. But what they've been able to do, and you can't miss the opportunity to talk about the GM there in San Diego, Tom Telesco, head coach Mike McCoy. Just take a look at their last 5 draft picks, 3 from the previous year, first, second, and third rounds in 2013. And then this past year, Jerry Atauchu, they trade up to get him in the second round, has an impact play, gets called for a face mask late in that game, but could have had the sack and strip fumble that ended it. But then, oh, by the way, their other rookie, Jason Verrett, playing against a receiver that I believe was 6'4", 6'5", Derek Carr, who played phenomenal, takes a shot at him, and he finds a way to end that football game with an interception. Go back to last year, DJ Fluker, maybe one of the best offensive linemen from that draft. Keenan Allen could have been the offensive rookie of the year a year ago, and Manti Te'o has been pretty solid despite some of his limitations that they got in the second round there. So when you add the players that they have there, it makes it a lot easier to not take shots for not adding big, pricey veterans in free agency. They did scrape a win out of Oakland that probably deserved to win that game. Tony Sperano deserves some credit there for rallying the troops. I took some shots at him on radio here during the week for burying the football. Not that he did it, but that he allowed it to be videotaped and shown all over the country. A little bit of a, that's one of those things that should stay between the coach and that staff and the 53 guys on the team. But I'm glad you mentioned that. Chargers entering a tough stretch, Chiefs, this weekend, and then they'll be on a short week against the Denver Broncos. So we're going to find out a little bit more about this team in the next few weeks.
Yeah, the New England Patriots continue to sort of show the national media and every fan out there that was calling for Tom Brady's head that they were more.
Don't just talk about the national media. Take a little credit as well. I can show some text messages right now about a certain number 12 being over the hill.
I don't remember having sent those at all. But one of our own, Rob Ninkovich, our 360 sort of client focus of the week, had a phenomenal game. 3 sacks, 4 tackles for a loss, 4 quarterback hurries in what was a full team performance by the New England Patriots. I think we actually have a clip of his interview afterwards.
Well, I think that the different games are, there's different ways to play in each game. In this game, the quarterback really wasn't moved too much, so I was able to, pin the ears back a little bit more and get after him. So, again, I think it was a good team win, and defensively, we still got to get better in some areas. We were able to move the ball a little bit more than we would have liked. So just got to keep working, and I'm going to keep working. I mean, yeah, that's always huge in this league. The more turnovers, the better chance of winning the game. So, again, we were able to get the ball out a little bit there, and those turnovers were key.
Is the ice better after a win?
Oh, definitely.
It was definitely great to see that defense have that amount of success. I mean, a much maligned defense. They've typically been at least perceived to be carried by number 12, and it's great to see that defense have some success. Sort of in a news segment of our 360 sort of celebrity of the week, Gary Barnidge had a guest appearance on WWE Divas, and I know it's a show, Kevin, that you watch religiously and make sure that you set your DVR to it each and every week. He had sort of an interesting segment on a show this Sunday night, going out on a couple of different dates. So I think we have a video of that as well.
Hi, how are you? Good. Are you alone? No, I'm meeting somebody here. Hey, how are you?
How you been?
Good to see you. I'm not wearing heels, so I'm a lot shorter.
That's all right.
Feels good.
Thank you very much.
Gary and I decided to go on a daytime date, which I love that. No danger zone, no nighttime. Oh my God, I love chips.
Should got some queso.
Oh.
I'm not on health. I just eat the better.
So do you even like vegetables?
No, I eat
okay.
everything. I don't monitor what I eat. I don't eat less. I eat everything.
That's the one thing
It doesn't need spice. Where's my tongue? I'm done.
I mean, I've been taking care of my body. I gained like 11 pounds of muscle. I have a better butt than some of the 20-year-olds in the locker room.
That's the works panel.
I want to be able to wear like short shorts to the ring with no nylons.
I like to wear short shorts too.
Gary and I are getting along really well, laughing, and he's getting my sarcasm. I kind of like that. Oh, that looks crazy. You're going to have to get your hands dirty.
It's all right. I don't mind that.
I want to bite.
You got cheese.
Oh my God.
Good.
I wish I didn't eat that. Thanks for watching WWE.
Well, that was certainly not how my dating life played out, but kind of a fun cameo for Gary Barnidge, tight end client from the Cleveland Browns. Kevin, what are you looking forward to seeing Monday night's game, San Francisco, St. Louis, quickly?
Well, I mean, we could talk about football all you want, but that queso, whatever they ordered there, looked absolutely delicious. Didn't know Cleveland offered that type of cuisine there. That's good to know if I make it back to Browns camp next year. But Monday night-wise, I think I'm looking for a couple things. I want to see Colin Kaepernick on the road, what he's going to be able to do. This is one of, I believe, his first road start came a couple years ago against the Rams on a primetime game situation, and he ran wild against them, had a big game. The 49ers, I just want to see if they're the 49ers that I expected to see coming into the season. And if anything, they sat in the hotel yesterday and watched a Seahawks team look very average, especially at home. So Jim Harbaugh, if he can rally his guys and get them to understand what is out in front of them, an opportunity for them. But Jeff Fisher coach teams are always going to play tough. Can that 49er O-line, which is taking their lumps at times this year, hold up against one of the best front fours in all of football? Monday Night Football, me personally, fantasy football, I need Phil Dawson to have a big night. I need a 10-point night to win my weekly matchup and get my 1-4 football team back on the right track.
Yeah, and I think on my end, my wife has Zach Stacy tonight, and so long as he doesn't fumble 4 times, she's high point for the week, and that's $80 for us. So that's dinner. So we're looking forward to that as well. Kev, appreciate the time as always. You got something else for me?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say maybe you can take some of that $80 and just make sure that my Oakley care package actually gets in the mail this week, because I've been hearing about it for a couple weeks, and I obviously, the shameless plugs that I am, on top of the WWE Diva show, I did wear my CBS hat today, and I would love to have a nice fluorescent Oakley collared shirt to wear not only here but out on the golf course, where I continue to hone my game for the next trophy that I'm forced to win. Once again, 3rd place at this year's San Diego State Coryell Classic. I'm coming for you, Billy Blanton. He won the 1st place trophy. You're mine this year, pal.
Yeah, only if I'm on your team this year. So start working on that, and I'll win you a 1st place trophy this year.
Wow. In your bright pink Oakley gear. I'm surprised we didn't get that this week.
A little more subtle. You sort of called me out last week when I tried to give our sponsor a little bit of screen time, but at the end of the day, you're my co-host and you run the ship.
There we go. It's time to hop off my back for another week, Ryan. Good show.
See you guys.